Nuck is dead. And the south side of Chicago will never be the same again. One bullet, pulled by the one person nobody saw coming, just flipped this entire final season of the Chi upside down. And if you think the worst is already over, episode 6 is about to prove you dead wrong. Let's be real for a second. Episode 5 of the Chi season 8, titled The Dead of Winter, did not just deliver a shocking moment, it delivered one of the most defining turning points in the entire history of this show. And if you've been riding with the Chi since the very beginning, you already know that this series does not hand out consequences easily. But Episode 5? Episode 5 collected every debt that's been building up for years, and it did it all in one cold, brutal night. Let's start at the beginning of how we got here, because the truth is, Nuck's downfall didn't happen overnight. It was a slow unraveling, thread by thread, episode by episode. For most of this final season, Tiff had been holding on to the version of Nuck she believed in, the version she built a life with, the version she trusted with her heart and her son. Even when the rumors started circulating, even when people around her were dropping hints, Tiff pushed back. She didn't want to believe it. And honestly, who could blame her? Because at the end of the day, doubt and confirmation are two very different things. But in episode 5, confirmation finally arrived, and it arrived in the most undeniable way possible. Kenya had been sitting on a voice note sent by Nuck's own father, Pastor Zeke, and in that recording, Zay revealed the truth that had been buried under lies and manipulation all season long. Nuck was the one who killed Rob. Not a rumor. Not a whisper passed around the South Side. A recorded confession from someone who knew exactly what Nuck had done. That voice note moved from Kenya to Lene, and then from Lene straight to Victor. And from the moment Victor heard that recording, the clock on Nuck's life started ticking down fast. Now, here's the part one want to sit on for a second, because it matters more than people are giving it credit for. Think about what it meant for Victor to be the one holding that information. Victor, who has loved Tiff for years. Victor, who went to prison. Victor, who came back to find the woman he loves entangled with the same man who had been pulling strings behind the scenes of so much pain on the South Side. Passing that recording to Tiff wasn't just an act of loyalty, it was an act of love. It was Victor finally being in a position where he could give her the truth that she deserved, and at the same time, remove the one obstacle that had been standing between him and any possible future with her. That's layers. That's this show operating at its best. And Tiff did not hesitate. She did not cry. She did not beg for an explanation. She did not give Nuck even a single breath to talk his way out of it. Nuck came through that door thinking everything was fine. He had just spent time with his son. He thought he had managed the situation, and he walked straight into the last moment of his life. Tiff picked up that gun, and she handled it. The very skills Nuck had taught her, she used against him. And that detail alone is one of the most poetic pieces of writing this show has delivered in years. Nuck literally handed Tiff the tools of his own destruction without ever realizing it. The moment hit different too, because of everything Nuck had survived leading into it. Rosalind came for him. Alicia came for him. The streets had been trying to take Nuck out for what felt like forever. And in the end, it wasn't a rival or an enemy with a grudge that brought him down. It was the woman who was supposed to be closest to him. That's what made the scenes so sharp and so final. There was no negotiation. There was no dramatic speech. Just the truth, a gun, and the end of Nuck's story, right in the middle of the final season, with 5 episodes still to go. But Nuck's death was not the only major loss in episode 5, and that's something people need to pay attention to going into episode 6. Because while Tiff was handling her business with Nuck, Rosalind was out here handling hers. Reg and Jackie were sent to take out Nora, the same woman who had been a crucial witness in Shad's case, the same woman who had already told Patience the truth about who paid her to lie. Nora changing her testimony made her a loose end for Rosalind, and Rosalind does not leave loose ends. By the end of the episode, a TV news report confirms what Shad had feared all along. Nora is gone. Shad's worst instinct turned out to be completely correct, and now both he and Patience are sitting on information about Rosalind that makes them targets, whether they know it or not. And then, in the middle of all this grief and blood and cold Chicago winter darkness, Emmett got down on one knee for Kiesha. And Kiesha got down on one knee right back. both of them proposing to each other at the same time, and honestly, in a season this heavy, that moment felt like the show letting you breathe for just a second before it pulls the rug out again. Emmett and Kiesha have been building towards something real for years, and watching them finally step into that future together was exactly the kind of emotional payoff that reminds you why you've been invested in these characters all along. So that's where we left off after episode 5. 2 deaths, 1 engagement, and a south side that just shifted into a completely different gear, heading toward the finale. Now, let's get into what episode 6 is bringing, because the title alone tells you everything you need to know. Episode 6 is titled When Truth Thaws. And I need you to really sit with that title for a moment, because the writers did not choose those words by accident. All season long, the South Side has been frozen. Frozen in secrets, frozen in lies, frozen in the kind of silence that only holds together as long as nobody asks the right question.
But now?
Now the temperature is changing. The ice is starting to crack. And everything buried underneath is about to push its way to the surface, whether these characters are ready for it or not. The official synopsis tells us that Tiff is throwing a lavish engagement party for Emmett and Kiesha, and that the happy couple starts discovering they have some real differences when it comes to what their wedding should actually look like. On the surface, that sounds like a fairly light-hearted storyline. And honestly, Emmett and Kiesha deserve a moment to just be happy and plan their future. But here's the thing, this is the Chi, and this is the final season. Nothing stays lighthearted for long, because the engagement party that Tiff is throwing is happening while Nuck's body is still unaccounted for, and the people who are closest to Nuck are already starting to ask questions that Tiff does not have clean answers to. Let's talk about Smitty and Big Mike first, because these two are going to be at the center of the immediate fallout from Nuck's disappearance. In the episode 6 promo, we see both of them circling Tiff, wanting to know where Nuck is. And Tiff, calm, controlled, and completely composed, tells them she has no idea. Now on the surface, Tiff pulling that off sounds almost impossible. But think about who Tiff has been becoming this entire season. She didn't fold when Rosalind was a threat. She didn't fold when Nuck's lies started stacking up. And she definitely didn't fold when she pulled that trigger. Tiff has been quietly stepping into a version of herself that is harder, sharper, and far more calculated than the woman we met in the early seasons. So holding it together in front of Smitty and Big Mike? That's absolutely within her range now. But Smitty is not someone who is easy to fool. And I think he's going to be the first person inside the 63rd Street Circle who starts genuinely suspecting that something happened to Nuck, and that Tiff knows more than she's letting on. Victor being present helps, because Victor has the kind of experience and composure in these situations that Tiff is still developing. He knows exactly how to redirect suspicion, how to control the temperature of a room, and how to make people feel like they're being heard without actually giving them anything real. So together, Tiff and Victor are a dangerous combination when it comes to keeping this secret locked down, at least for now. But here's where it starts getting complicated. Because Fatima is also in this episode, and Fatima is not someone who misses things. She knows Victor.
She knows how he operates.
She knows his tells, she knows his silences, and she knows the difference between Victor being calm and Victor being deliberately calm. And the promo suggests that Fatima is already picking up on the fact that Victor is hiding something significant. Now, the question is, how far does Fatima push? And how much does Victor give away? Even without meaning to. Because the more people who start pulling at this thread, the faster the whole thing unravels. Then there's Kiesha. And this is the moment, I think, actually sets the real domino effect in motion for episode 6. We see Kiesha telling Tiff that she's worried about Nuck. She's asking questions, the way any reasonable person would when someone they know just suddenly disappears. And Tiff tries to shut that conversation down immediately. But Kiesha is not the type to just let something go when her instincts are telling her something isn't right. She's perceptive, she's emotionally intelligent, and she's about to step into a marriage with Emmett, which means she is not going to walk into that future carrying someone else's secret. Once Kiesha senses that Tiff's reaction is off, she is going to bring it to Emmett. And that's where things get really serious. Because Emmett already knows things. Victor told him information earlier in the season, and Emmett has been sitting on pieces of this puzzle for a while. So when Kiesha comes to him with her concern, Emmett is going to have to make a decision about how honest he's willing to be with the woman he just asked to marry him. And I genuinely don't think Emmett is going to choose secrecy here. Not at this stage. Not when he's trying to build a real life with Kiesha, not when they just made that commitment to each other. He's going to tell her what he knows. And the moment he does, both Emmett and Kiesha will start connecting the dots, and those dots are going to lead them straight to the conclusion that Tiff killed Nuck. This puts Emmett and Kiesha in one of the most difficult positions any characters on this show have faced. Because Tiff is not some stranger. She's their friend. She's been woven into their lives for years. And the truth is, what she did to Nuck wasn't random violence. It was justice for Rob, the father of her child, a man who was taken from her by the very person she ended up falling for. The moral weight of that is enormous. Do they turn Tiff in? Do they protect her? Do they pretend they don't know? These are not easy questions, and episode 6 is likely just the beginning of Emmett and Kiesha wrestling with them. The real decision probably doesn't get made until we're deeper into the back half of the season. Now let's talk about Bari, because his situation in episode 6 is about to become significantly more dangerous. In the promo, we see Tiff confronting Bari directly, slapping him and telling him that he owes her. And she's right. Bari knew what Nuck did. He knew about Rob's murder. He sat on that information. He even used it as a veiled threat against Nuck at that party. All of that while Tiff was living alongside the man who killed the father of her son. So yeah, Bari owes her. And what Tiff is most likely going to ask him to do is help get rid of Nuck's body, because that is the one loose end that could destroy everything she and Victor have worked to cover up. Think about what that means for Bari. He's already deep into Reg's world, already operating in spaces that are getting more and more dangerous by the episode. Emmett and Kiesha are heading into their engagement with love, hope, and a future they've both been fighting for, and episode 6 is about to drop the weight of a murder right in the middle of all of that. Because once they start connecting the dots around Nuck's disappearance, they're not going to be able to just look the other way. And that's the real tension that's going to carry us through the back half of this final season. Do they protect Tiff and Victor, or do they do what's right? That's not a small question. That's a question that could destroy every relationship in that circle all at once. And then there's Bari. In the promo, we see Tiff slapping him and telling him flat out that he owes her. And she's right. Bari knew the truth about Rob's murder and kept it from her. He sat on that secret while Tiff built a whole life with the man who took Rob away from her. So when Tiff comes to collect that debt, she's going to ask Bari to do something serious, most likely help get rid of Nuck's body. And Bari, with nowhere else to turn and everything to lose, is probably going to say yes. But here's the problem. Helping dispose of a body doesn't just make Bari an accessory, it pulls him deeper into danger than he's ever been. Even if the police don't catch him immediately, someone close to him is going to find out. And by the time we reach the finale, Bari's situation could become one of the most tragic storylines of the entire season. Now, let's talk about Rashad, because this is the storyline that could explode the fastest. Rashad lost Nora. And Rashad is not the type of man who processes grief quietly. He processes it with action. In the promo, we see him preparing to move on revenge, and we see him pointing a gun directly at someone. The most likely target?
Reg.
Because once Rashad connects the dots and figures out that Reg was behind Nora's murder, there is nothing Victor is going to be able to say to fully stop him. Victor doesn't like Reg either. Everyone knows that. But Reg is still his biological brother, and that blood connection means Victor is going to find himself stuck between the man he considers family and the brother he was born to. That's a choice nobody wins. The way I see it playing out, Victor is going to do what Jake did back in episode 5. Choose loyalty over blood. He's going to protect Rashad, let him get his hands on Reg to a point, but stop it just short of a killing. And that moment, Reg being beaten and then pushed away by his own brothers, is exactly the kind of humiliation that turns a dangerous man into a desperate one. With Nuck gone, and the 63rd Street mob leaderless, Reg stepping in to take control of those streets is not just possible, it feels inevitable. And the person who is going to have to stand in his way is Trig, his own brother. That conflict has been building since the beginning of this season, and episode 6 is going to light the fuse on it in a major way. Here's the bigger picture that all of this is painting. The The Chi Season 8 is the final season.
There are no more chances after this.
Every decision these characters make from episode 6 forward is either going to save them or finish them. Tiff pulled the trigger on Nuck, and now she's hosting an engagement party like nothing happened. But Chicago does not let secrets stay buried forever. Rosalind is still out there, still operating, still dangerous. Reg is about to have more power than he's ever had. Rashad is grieving and armed. And Emmett and Kiesha, the couple we've rooted for through every single season, are about to find out that love does not protect you from the truth. This show has always been about the South Side, about the cost of survival, the weight of loyalty, and what it means to keep going when everything around you is falling apart. And episode 6, when Truth Thaws, is going to remind every single one of us why the Chi earned its place as one of the most powerful dramas on television. The truth is coming. And when it does, nothing, not an engagement party, not a cover story, not a brother's loyalty, is going to be able to stop it. That's everything for today's full breakdown of the Chi Season 8 Episode 6. If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit subscribe so you never miss a single breakdown, recap, or theory drop as we ride out this final season together. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your theories in the comments below. Do you think Emmett and Kiesha will turn Tiff in? Can Bari survive what's coming? And is Reg about to take over the whole South Side? Let's talk about it. I'll see you in the next one.